Welcome back to Tales from the Long Box. We've spent 4 videos now digging through the back issue bins for Marvel's Forgotten Heroes. But the deeper I look, the more I realize just how many characters are still waiting in the shadows. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that channel memberships are now live. Members will get their names featured at the end of future videos, and will also get to vote in polls about what I cover in the content to come. For this 5th installment, we're getting to the truly unusual stuff. Everything from mystics who pulled the strings on the Avengers, to shapeshifters made of living protoplasm, gravity-wielding kids, and barbarians lost in dimensions most fans have never heard of. These aren't just names for a trivia contest, they're characters who actually had a lot going for them before they were sidelined. Their stories were cut short, or just lost in the shuffle. So let's look at why these heroes were left behind, and more importantly, what Marvel could do to bring them back to finally finish what they started. Anthony Ludgate, better known as Dr. Druid, is one of the weirdest cautionary tales in Marvel history. It's not that he lacked power, it's just that he was his own worst enemy, which is impressive considering he fought actual demons. Originally showing up in 1961 as Dr. Druid, Marvel's actual first recurring Silver Age hero, beating the Fantastic Four by a few months, he was later rebranded to Dr. Druid to avoid confusion with Doctor Doom. That shaky start says it all. Druid is a relic of Marvel's experimental phase, a character concept that never quite found its footing. And honestly, being a relic kinda became his whole brand. Ludgate started out with a respectable life, a Harvard-educated physicist and a man of science. On paper, he should have stayed far away from magic, but he got obsessed. After finding out he was descended from an ancient druid, he went down the occult rabbit hole and traveled to Tibet to train under the Ancient One. That connection alone should have made him an A-list mystic. Instead, it mostly just made him dangerous. Early on, he wasn't your typical superhero. He was more like a paranormal investigator who outsmarted aliens with a weird, clinical detachment. The red flags were everywhere. Druid didn't just want to help, he wanted to be the smartest guy in the room. And he usually was, which only made him more annoying. Things really went south when he joined the Avengers. On paper, it made sense. The team always needs a mystic heavy hitter. But once he was inside the mansion, his ego took over. He wasn't just arrogant, he was quietly manipulative. During his stay, he psychically nudged his teammates and eventually schemed his way into becoming the Avengers chairman. The wildest part? He generally thought what he was doing was best for the team, even while he was messing with their free will. That moral gray area is where he actually gets interesting. Or at least, that's where you start wanting to see someone finally punch him. Downward Spiral peaked when he fell under the spell of Ravonna Renslayer, acting as Kang Nebula, leading to one of the most awkward eras in Avengers history. It ended with Druid disgraced and literally lost in the time stream, which, let's be real, is kind of the superhero equivalent of being sent to your room. Marvel didn't just bench him, they basically admitted he was a problem. After clawing his way back, he tried for redemption. Doctor Strange even let him lead the Secret Defenders, a nice gesture, until you remember, Strange's hiring process is basically who isn't busy on Tuesday. True to form, Druid sabotaged the whole thing. Feeling insecure and totally unfit to lead, he manipulated events until the team collapsed. It wasn't mind control this time. Anthony Ludgate just didn't trust his own heroism. That psychological flaw is the thread throughout his whole history. Things eventually got even darker when Damon Hailstrom set up the dominoes that led to Druid's death at the hands of Necro. A brutal, humiliating end that really cemented his fall. But, as you and I both know, in Marvel, death is just a temporary vacation. Druid eventually popped up in Weirdworld, reinventing himself as a secret puppet master, the most on-brand move ever for a guy who loves control over heroics. He eventually made it back to Earth, trying to live a quiet life in medicine. Whether his redemption was real is debatable. See, Dr. Druid isn't forgotten because he's boring. He's forgotten because he's kind of uncomfortable. He's in that rare category of heroes who were allowed to be genuinely flawed in ways that make readers uneasy. Manipulative, prideful, and occasionally self-delusional. In today's polished, brand-managed Marvel landscape, characters like that usually get smoothed out. But in our current era of morally messy protagonists, Dr. Druid actually makes more sense now than he did in the 80s. If you created Dr. Druid from scratch today, he wouldn't be a straight-up superhero. Modern Marvel has moved that confident mystic archetype he was supposed to be, but that's kinda why he works now. Anthony Ludgate isn't interesting when he's trying to be the next Doctor Strange. He's interesting when he's compromised, and you aren't sure if he's helping or just steering the room. The best take today would lean into what he accidentally became. A morally slippery psychic who thinks he knows better than everyone else. Not quite a villain, but definitely not someone you want in your head without an invitation. In the modern Marvel landscape, that opens up some cool lanes. The easiest move is making him a high-end occult consultant who works adjacent to the heroes. Think less costume Avenger and more behind-the-scenes manipulator. The guy you call when things are too weird or ethically grayed for comfort. The key is making him useful but deeply untrustworthy. Audience today love characters who weaponize intelligence. His background as a psychiatrist is a goldmine. A writer could frame him as someone who profiles heroes and nudges outcomes in ways that make the readers flinch. Another possible move would be leaning into his messy past. In the 80s, he was just seen as arrogant. Today, you could reframe that history as something that haunts his reputation. Imagine the tension. The Avengers need him, but nobody wants him in the room. It's the kind of built-in friction that modern team books thrive on. There's also a huge potential in the supernatural corner of Marvel. Druid fits perfectly into stories about psychic manipulation and reality-bending threats. The kind of stuff that needs someone willing to cross lines the good heroes won't touch. Used right, he becomes Marvel's necessary discomfort character. The guy who might save the day, but only after making everyone feel gross about how he did it. Honestly, that version of Dr. Druid feels way more at home in modern comics than the straight-faced mystic hero he was originally supposed to be. Plasmer is exactly the kind of character that slips through the cracks of Marvel history. Not because the concept was weak, but because she showed up at the wrong time and never got that sustained push needed to stick. At her core is Dr. Unga Malarkey, a scientist who attempted to supercharge her own abilities through a messy fusion of magic and science. Which of course went catastrophically sideways. Instead of a promotion, the experiment literally split her psyche in two. Malarkey's original body kept the darkest, more ruthless personality, while her better half was given a living protoplasmic being. It's a surprisingly modern premise for the early 90s. Identity fracture, science metamysticism, and a hero who is quite literally only half a person. After her messy birth, Plasmer went on a short-lived journey of self-discovery that escalated way faster than expected, involving the British Sleepers, a group of artificial giants capable of global destruction. With some heavy-hitting backup from Black Knight, Captain Britain, and eventually Captain America, she helped neutralize the threats and prove she belonged in the hero game. But the hook that should have defined her long-term was never fully mined. Her greatest enemy wasn't an invading army or even a cosmic god. It was her own original self. That built-in duality is where the real potential lives. But Marvel basically left that story unread. Power-wise, Plasmer is deceptively scary. Her protoplasmic body lets her reshape herself into basically anything, grow weapons from her own biomass, and crank her strength up to class 50 levels. She can even split into multiple autonomous duplicates that reintegrate later to share info, the ultimate divide and conquer tactic. The trade-off is classic Marvel. The more she divides herself, the more fragmented and unstable her brain becomes. In other words, the more power she uses, the less together she is. It's a clean and elegant limitation that would give modern writers plenty of excuses for high-stakes drama. Is it the first time that something like this has been done? No. Multiple Man exists. But I still think there's room for stories that have this kind of power. Despite a solid start and some big-name team-ups, including an assist from the Silver Surfer, Plasmer never quite secured a permanent locker at Avengers Mansion. She emerged in a crowded 90s landscape, mostly in UK-adjacent books, quietly faded out before readers could really get attached. And that's exactly why I think she fits this series of videos. Plasmer isn't completely forgotten because she failed. She's forgotten because Marvel never decided what lane she belongs in. Mystical experiment or psychological hero. But today, where identity crises and morally complex origins are the bread and butter of comics, she might actually be more relevant now than she was 30 years ago. Plasmer is a character modern Marvel could use to explore themes that were way ahead of her time today. Today, the idea of being a hero living in a metaphor for internal conflict and unchecked ambition is exactly what resonates. writers could lean into the psychological horror of her existence. A scientist constantly negotiating with her own identity while navigating a world that's probably a little grossed out by what she represents. A contemporary run could also finally do something with her evil original half. Imagine an externalized hero/villain dynamic that doesn't feel forced, because they literally share a soul. Plasmer could work as a strategist for a team like the Avengers or even Excalibur, the morally gray problem solver who makes everyone a little uncomfortable. There's also a huge potential in the cosmic and mystical corners of Marvel. Pairing her back up with Doctor Strange or the Silver Surfer would make for some visual trippy, conceptually deep stories. The key is to lean into the existential stakes. Much like Dr. Druid, shouldn't be a typical superhero. She should be a living question mark, powerful, unpredictable, and constantly wrestling with what it actually means to be a human when you're made of sentient goo. Next up is someone I've gotten quite a few comments and recommendations for, and that character is Gravity. Gravity is one of those characters who has always hovered right on the edge of being a major player. Not because he isn't interesting, but because he hasn't quite found a long-term narrative home. Enter Greg Willis, a kid from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, whose journey from small-town life to cosmic-level stakes was anything but ordinary. During his summer vacation aboard his family's yacht, Greg was unexpectedly sucked into a miniature black hole. When he was recovered, hours later, he discovered he could manipulate the gravity around his body. Naturally, he did what any college kid would do. He moved to New York City to study licensing and merchandising at NYU while secretly moonlighting as the superhero Gravity. Early in his career, he faced the kind of harsh reality checks that most rookies don't survive. A bad case of mistaken identity actually allowed the villain Black Death to escape, which really tested Greg's confidence. But he stuck with it, serving civilians and eventually earning the respect of Spider-Man, which helped him build up the sense of responsibility he needed. Over time, small victories like taking down the Rhino and eventually confronting Black Death, who was posing as the Greenwich Guardian, centered his resolve. He wasn't just a kid with powers anymore, he was starting to become a hero. Eventually, Gravity's story escalated from local New York heroics to full-blown cosmic responsibility. He survived the Battleworld crisis, where he actually sacrificed himself to stabilize the planet and save his teammates. But, again, because death is usually just a suggestion in comics, he was resurrected by Epoch, the protector of the universe. This gave him a temporary power boost that was mass enough to challenge beings like Galactus. But being a genuine Midwestern guy, he used those powers selflessly to save Epoch instead of trying to take over the galaxy. Back on Earth, he continued to grow, participating in the 50-state initiative, sniffing out Skrull infiltrators during secret invasions, and defending New York during the Spider Island incident. He eventually joined the Young Allies, teaming up with Firestar, Spider-Girl, Nomad, and Toro to stop the Bastards of Evil and investigate a villain named Superior. He even fought interdimensional entities like Mother and helped the Secret Avengers against Onslaught, showing he could adapt to pretty much any threat. Despite all the team-ups, Gravity usually prefers to operate independently, trusting his own judgment, which shows a level of maturity you don't always see in younger heroes. Power-wise, Gravity is a heavy hitter. He controls gravitons, particles that let him manipulate gravity like a second skin. He can fly at high speed, push or pull objects with crazy precision, and fire off concussive energy blasts. He can even use it to make his punches hit like a freight train, or generate defensive shields that can tank an explosion. Even when he was the protector of the universe, he didn't bother with the usual quantum bands. He just channeled that cosmic energy through his own gravity control. He's all raw power and heroic ingenuity. Gravity is the perfect example of a character who has been hovering on the edge of relevance for years. Marvel could finally give him that platform he deserves by leading into that classic coming-of-age vibe with a cosmic twist. He's literally survived death and touched the infinite, which gives him a perspective most young heroes just don't have. Writers could do a lot with the tension between Greg Willis, the regular young adult, and Gravity, the guy who can literally hold his own universe in his hands. His powers are inherently cinematic and visually striking. He can move seamlessly from street-level action in Manhattan to deflecting a planetary threat in deep space. He reminds me a lot of Nova, to be honest. His ability to manipulate gravitons allows for some really creative combat, lifting buildings, freezing enemies in place, or creating shields in tight spots. Plus, he fits perfectly into that current trend of younger, morally complex heroes. He isn't infallible, he makes mistakes, and misreads situations. It makes him a great relatable lead, or even a mentor for someone even younger. At the end of the day, Gravity's story is a metaphor waiting to be explored. A young man who literally holds the weight of the world on his shoulders while trying to find his place in it. He doesn't need to be a central Avenger to shine. He just needs the right stage to show he's more than a secondary hero. He's uniquely compelling because he can walk between the grit of the street and the scale of the cosmos. That's a goldmine for any modern creator. Ultragirl, also known as Susanna, is one of those characters who perfectly blends intergalactic destiny with the messy reality of being a teenager. Her early life is a bit of a mystery, but we know she was raised in California by human guardians, while a secret community of pink-skinned Kree basically watched her from the bushes like cosmic creeps. According to the Kree prophecy, Susanna wasn't just another hybrid. She was supposed to be the ultimate unifier, destined to restore the Kree Empire to its former glory by taking down both the Shi'ar and the blue-skinned Kree. But for years she had no idea. Her powers were buried deep, and she grew up as just another girl in the sun, unaware that she was walking around with a massive cosmic target on her back. She officially stepped into the superhero world as Ultragirl after a Sentinel attack forced her Kree physiology to kick in. She actually got her code name from the media because she had a habit of shouting Ultra whenever things got intense. Which, let's be honest, is a very 90s move. In the beginning, she was more interested in fame and endorsements than saving the world. But things got real fast. While fighting alongside the New Warriors against a villain named FX, she accidentally killed him during the battle. That moment was a massive turning point. It stripped away the glamour and forced her to actually understand what responsibility meant. From there, she stepped up, helping the Warriors stop a Badoon invasion and eventually becoming a full-fledged member of the team. Her career has been right in the middle of some of Marvel's biggest headaches. During the Stanford disaster, when the New Warriors were unfairly blamed for the tragedy caused by Nitro, Ultragirl's civilian identity was leaked online. She didn't hide though. She joined Captain America's Secret Avengers, went through the initiative at Camp Hammond, and fought alongside other series favorites like Gravity and Firestar. She survived Skrull sleeper agents during Secret Invasion, dealt with the mess of Norman Osborn's Dark Reign, and even helped keep the peace during the Fear Itself riots. She's even gone toe-to-toe with extra-dimensional threats, including evil version of the Young Avengers, proving she can handle everything from a street brawl to a rally warping crisis. Power-wise, Ultragirl is definitely a heavy hitter. She's got the strength to lift at least 50 tons, plus the speed, stamina, and durability to shrug off hits that would flatten a normal human. She can fly at 500 miles per hour, has a crazy healing factor, and her body naturally adapts to physical and mental stress. She also has this unique ability to see energy auras, which lets her instantly tell the difference between a human, a mutant, and a machine. Oh, and she's immune to fire, probably because of a protective energy field she generates. Even without formal training, her Kree mutant hybrid body makes her a natural combatant who can handle herself on Earth or in deep space. Her origins are still a bit of a living question mark, whether she's half human, half Kree, or some kind of V-Factor mutant alien variant. Her potential is massive and probably still evolving. That's exactly why I still think she's the goldmine for modern stories. Writers could put her right at the intersection of street-level drama, high stakes, and interstellar politics, much like we talked about with Gravity. Imagine her navigating the pressures of being the ultimate unifier while just trying to have a normal life in California. It's the perfect setup about story, identity, and belonging. The alien who feels human, and the human who has a galactic empire waiting for her to lead them. Visually, her powers are a dream from modern comics. She can lift buildings, fly supersonic speeds, and see things no one else can see. That energy aura perception is a great tool for espionage or detective-style stories, giving her a niche that other heavy hitters don't really have. I think they could do some really cool stuff if they focused on that. Personality-wise, she's already relatable. She's dealt with the highs and lows of fame, the guilt of a life lost in battle, and the struggle of finding your place in a team. In today's Marvel landscape, she'd be the perfect mentor for the next generation or a powerhouse member of a new champion-style squad. At the end of the day, Ultragirl is a hero can do it all. She can handle grounded personal stories about media scrutiny and relationships on Earth, but she can also fly off to deal with Krishiar political civil war. She's a living bridge between the stars and the streets, and that versatility is exactly why she shouldn't be sitting on the shelf. She's not just a secondary character, she, much like Gravity, is a cosmic legend in the making, just waiting for the right creators to give them the push that they deserve. Now on to one of my personal favorites, Goleta the Wizard Slayer. Goleta first showed up in 2015's Weirdworld, and she immediately stood out as one of the most brutally memorable characters from Marvel's Fantasy Corner. She's a barbarian warrior from Weirdworld, which, if you aren't familiar, is basically a chaotic, unforgiving dimension filled with sorcery, monsters, and kingdoms that don't like each other. But what makes Goleta cool isn't just that she's great at hitting things, it's her absolute scorched earth hatred of magic. Her home, the Valley of the Burled Oak, was wiped out by the Wildermen, and that loss turned into a visceral, personal grudge. She spent her days wandering the Savage Lands as the realm's deadliest wizard slayer, and she took that job very seriously. Her story really kicks off when she crosses paths with Becca the Earth Girl, a human who got stranded in Weirdworld. In their first meeting, Goleta casually kills a wizard named Ogeode right in front of her, which pretty much forces the terrified Becca into Goleta's orbit. Becca eventually insists on becoming Goleta's scribe, and the two of them set off across the landscape together. They faced everything from resurrected cat beasts, a reborn Ogeode, to hostile factions and rival warlords, all while Goleta tried to teach Becca the brutal reality of life in a land where survival is the only thing that matters. One of the best parts of Goleta's nomadic life is her heavily modified muscle car, the Gloriana. Seeing a barbarian driving a war machine car in a sword and sorcery realm is such a great visual. It's more than just a ride though, it's a combat asset. She uses it to smash through obstacles and engage enemies at high speeds. There is even a point where they got attacked by sand sharks and had to repair the car while under fire, which just goes to show how much her survival is tied to her gear. Power-wise, Goleta is a beast. She's got superhuman strength, incredible battlefield instincts, and she's a master of melee weapons. Her agility and endurance are off the charts for surviving Weirdworld's harshest environments, making her a threat to pretty much anyone, especially those magic users she hates so much. Besides being a central figure in the Weirdworld series, her story never really bled into the broader Marvel continuity. She's stuck in her own corner, which is a shame because I think her potential is huge. Goleta is a character just waiting for a modern comeback, especially in stories that mix high fantasy with dark humor. Her anti-magic obsession that makes her the perfect foil for characters like Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, Clea, or even Dr. Druid. Imagine the tension of a traditional Marvel mystic having you team up with someone who wants to put an axe through their head. Plus, unlike your typical hero, Goleta operates in a massive moral gray area. She isn't fighting for justice or payback, she's usually just fighting for survival and revenge. That opens the door for much darker, more mature stories. Marvel could easily use her to lead a team back into Weirdworld, maybe reluctantly mentoring a new hero or clashing with magical entities or powerful artifacts. And we definitely need more of the Gloriana. That hybrid muscle car is just too fun for visually dynamic action scenes. Juxtaposing high-octane technology with ancient barbarianism is a vibe that hasn't been fully tapped yet. I loved it when Punisher did it, and I love it in this. At the end of the day, Goleta works best when she isn't trying to be a traditional superhero. By leaning into her survival skills, her tragic backstory with the Wildermen, and her unique gear, Marvel could craft something that feels fresh, dangerous, and a little bit unhinged. She's a warrior who deserves the spotlight. And honestly, the Marvel Universe would be a lot more interesting if she was driving her muscle car through it. And that's a wrap on the 5th trip into the back issue bins for Marvel's Forgotten Heroes. From a mess of a mystic like Dr. Druid, to the identity crisis of Plasmer, the what-if legacy of Ultragirl, and the cosmic weight carried by Gravity. Not to mention a barbarian with a muscle car like Goleta. These aren't just names that fell under the radar. These are characters with stories that are just as weird, rich, and compelling as the A-listers everyone knows. Some of these heroes met tragic ends, others got lost in the shuffle of different dimensions, and some just never got the long-term push they deserved. But each of them is a reminder that Marvel Universe has always been way bigger, and more unpredictable than most people realize. They might not have their own blockbuster movie franchises yet, but in the pages of comics, their potential is still limitless. Revisiting them just proves that sometimes the most fascinating stories are the ones that don't always get the spotlight. So what do you think? Send me some more characters that you think are forgotten. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want to go a little further, channel memberships are now live, and members get their names featured in the end credits of future videos. And if you want to help support the research directly, you can always visit my Ko-Fi. The link is right down in the description. Every bit of support helps me keep the long box open. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.